Recently in the newspaper the issue has been energy tax. And because energy tax doesn't have any exemption for low income or the elderly or fixed income or even minorities with low income, would you, if elected, support the idea of repealing the tax immediately? And then there was talks of even putting a tax on water usage. Would you also promise not to support any bill taxing our usage of water, each of you, as if you were elected?
You're not going to like my answer very much. I would not vote to repeal the energy tax immediately. Repealing energy tax is like taking a water hose to put out a forest fire. The problem in our taxes is the 600-pound elephant is the school tax, not the property tax. The energy tax is approximately $50 to $80 per household per year. The property tax is 65% of the entire budget, which is about $5,100 a year. Which one do we want to get down? Get rid of the $80, or should we be focusing our attitudes on the $5,100 that's being spent? 65% of the budget is the school tax. 20% is the town tax. 16% is the county tax. And that particular tax was adopted to fill a hole in the budget. Before we had Tom Swazi balancing the budget, we were in bankruptcy. We're right at the verge of bankruptcy. We finally got somebody that says, okay, we're spending money, we're getting services, but we don't have quite enough money, so we have to find another source. So let's look for some alternative sources. It may not be the best alternative source. No tax at all is popular. But we have to find alternative taxes so we can get rid of that $5,100 elephant in the room.
There's been a lot of misinformation about the energy tax. I will say, I would see a sunset on the energy tax. I don't think we need that as a permanent tax. We have enough taxes in Nassau County, but we do need to bring up the sales tax revenue and so forth. But there's a lot of misinformation about that tax. It's coming from my opponents, coming from Legislator Mangano. It's coming from quite a few people. I haven't heard Dennis Dunn say anything about it yet, but I don't need to say much at all anyway. So the problem,
He says he's going to repeal it immediately. He's going to sponsor the bill.
the problem is what they're saying is that it's a 2.5% tax that equals a 4.5% tax. And that sounds like, oh, well, then it's actually 4.5% tax. But what it is the energy tax, by being a tax on everybody in Nassau County, it takes the onus off the homeowner. If it was just a tax, an energy tax for the homeowner, the property owner, it'd be 4.5%. But by spreading it out, it's only 2.5%. Now, Nassau County is actually one of the last few places in New York State that actually has an energy tax. We were the last one on board. Suffolk has had one for years, New York City, Westchester, upstate. And actually, if you believe it, the Long Beach School District and I believe the Glen Cove School District, or Port Washington, I'm not sure which one, has part of the school taxes is an energy tax. They've been doing it for a number of years already. We're in dire straits nationally when it comes to the economy and locally, because the sales tax revenue has just plummeted. We're on our way back slowly, but we do need to pay for police and essential services. You know, if we start to cut services, people complain. You know, there were protests outside of the legislative building earlier this year because there were talks of cutting this, cutting that, and the people standing up. Sorry, my time is up.
The energy tax is actually just a sales tax, and the reason the legislative majority did it is because we needed to remain financially stable. It's about $8 per month is what it is. If we didn't have that tax in place, your property taxes would be higher. And the reason is when Tom Swazi and the Democrats took office, the bond rating when they first came in was junk bond status. When they took office, it raised to AAA. Now, if you allow that bond rating to go down, and that's what happened right now, if you didn't create this energy sales tax, then the bond rating goes down and you're actually going to pay more interest on those bonds, and that's why your property taxes would go up. So we needed to have this tax. We'd all love to see a tax repealed, but we have to remain financially stable, and you can't repeal that tax until you replace it with something else. But not to get back to this question about the school districts, but I have to say something that just came to my mind, and it goes back to why this tax was important and where there's so many other problems in the school districts, is that why every time when you vote a budget down, are they repeatedly allowed to vote again, and vote again, and vote again on that same budget. It's as if your vote didn't count, and that really bothers me about the school district budgets, for one thing.
Amen.
So I wouldn't worry so much about this energy tax, because 2.5%, $8 a month, is a lot better than a 10% rise in your property taxes.
But would all of you commit not to raise a water tax? No, they didn't answer that. No, that was the energy tax, but I asked about the future of a possible water tax. Will they commit not to raise?
Let's see if anybody else has a question, we'll get back to you.
But that was still a part of the
That
question.
was part of your first question?
Right.
It was, yes.
They already had their answers. Let's go on, and then we'll see if we have time to go back. Okay, are there any other questions?
Can we get back to my water question?
All right,
Yeah, I was just wondering, if you're elected, will you pledge now that you will not put a water usage tax on the people's water? Because unlike tea is not a necessity, but water is.
all right. You had asked this before.
Right, and
And
answer.
they have the option.
so let them say they don't want to
of not
answer.
addressing,
Right.
and which they took before.
I'll be glad to.
But I don't know if it was an oversight or it was
It wasn't
intentional.
on my part, no, I'll be glad to.
Right,
I'll be glad to.
thank you.
Okay, okay.
I will not promise to do that. I will not promise in advance. What I will promise to do is to do a study as to what are the best tax alternatives we can get. I happen to think a value-added tax is a much better alternative. But I will not promise to rule out that at this point because I'm not fully enough informed to decide that. I don't have personally agree off the cuff that water should be taxed, but I'm not sure that there might be a particular circumstance where it might be necessary. So at this point, I'm not in a position to make that promise. I don't want to make a promise to you that I cannot keep. But I will find an alternative tax that will reduce our taxes.
I'll agree with Glenn there, where making a promise for something that something may happen in the future would be wrong to do. I think we learned that George H.W. Bush learned that lesson when he said, "Leave our lips, no new taxes." I'm not looking at going into legislature. I will seek to raise taxes. I would, as a homeowner and a taxpayer, I don't believe that we should keep going down the road of raising taxes. Anybody who said, I've always been against raising taxes, and talk about going back 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years. Well, if taxes weren't raised in the past century, our police force would be paying $40 a day, or for $40 a week, as opposed to what they're paid now. So we have services to pay for, and we do need revenue to pay for those services. How we go about getting that revenue is what we have to look into. Making promises to say, well, we're not gonna raise this or we're not gonna do that, take something completely off the table that we might need to look into. Again, with the energy tax, the choice was either just tax the homeowner and put everything on top of the homeowner, which include just on top of their town taxes and their school tax, add another tax with the energy tax, or spread it out. So I wouldn't want to commit to something that I would have to look into first. But going to the legislature, I would not want to look to continue to raise taxes, but we do need to find sources of revenue if we need to continue as a functioning county, because we cannot backslide into more borrowing as we did before, go into deep deficits, go to junk bond status in our bond rating, and go almost bankrupt, which we did before. We can't go back to that.
I have to agree with what was said also. I mean, I could not say that I couldn't vote for a tax when the tax isn't even on the table, but I do want to say one thing. You don't need a new tax if you have more revenue. If you have projects like the Long Island Lighthouse, if you agree with public and private partnerships, then we don't need those new taxes. So that's what I think we ought to be doing. Not looking to say, what are we going to tax more? We have to look for that revenue. Look for the Long Island Lighthouse. It will create revenue, and it's a good project. The Coleman Country Camp that just bought that land that was down in North America, actually a portion of it is in Roosevelt. That's a good project. They paid $650,000, that was revenue to the county, and they're going to pay annual taxes every year. So nobody wants to tax water. Nobody in their right mind would say they want a new tax, but we can't say that we can't, that we would vote against something like that because we're not there. We want to keep the county financially stable, and Tom Swazi and the legislative majority have been doing so over the past 8 years. And I think he's gotten this county out of some very rough times. He's brought the bond rating up, and we want to continue to work with that majority and with Tom Swazi But the only way to do it is to bring in more revenue.